Severance has taken the world by storm, with the latest season once again shocking us with its deeply layered narrative and each episode hinting at completely different details. When we're intrigued by one detail, the series randomly drops another detail that completely changes our perspective, but throughout its run so far, the series has strayed away from reality by establishing its world, and each episode has made that world look much weirder. At the same time, fans were excited about the previous episode. The latest episode brought in much more shocking material. In the process, the latest episode seems to have made a reference we might have completely missed. Let's look at the bizarre mention of the Montauk Project and what it could mean for Severance, and finally give the series a real-world reference.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
The Montauk Project reference. Lumen Industries has got to be one of the most bizarre corporations we've ever seen, and with each episode, it only gets weirder. Often, the series will take some interesting details and play around with them, only revealing the larger secret at the tip of the iceberg and letting us process this revelation for a long time. The latest episode takes on an interesting narrative. It builds deeper into the lore behind Lumen by introducing us to too much information, particularly the so-called Tempers that have played another major mystery in the series. But all this only meant some rather unsettling revelations that kept us wondering about the next big thing that would appear. But amidst all of this, there was a rather bizarre yet interesting moment with much more to be explored. Irving goes into the woods alone to seek answers and look for Mr. Milchick during the weird company retreat. He loses his way and sleeps in the forest. This was where Lumen's founder, Kier, had discovered the Woe Temper. The dream that Irving ends up having has some really interesting parallels to what happened to Kier. He sees Christopher Walken's Bert in the dream while sitting in the same cubicle place from their office at the MDR division, and then discovers a woman sitting across from him who looks somewhat like Woe from the illustration that Kier had made in his book. It's interesting how, later in the episode, Irving becomes the one to reveal that Helena is disguised as her innie and not the Helly we knew. But before we get into that, we've got to focus on the details that have made the real-world connection for Severance that we didn't expect. Remember the office space that Irving saw in the woods in his dream? On his monitor, we could see the same usual numbers floating around, but they were making a pattern that almost made it look like an eye. On the same monitor, a small text pops up that says Montauk 3% complete. Yeah, it's not surprising that there's another bizarrely titled project he found himself working on, titled Montauk, in his dream. But we can't let go of the Montauk Project easily because it's also the name of an old conspiracy theory. If we get into the nitty-gritty of this theory, we'll see that there are interesting parallels between this theory and the world of Severance, and it might end up changing the way we look at the events of the world in Severance. The Montauk Project. So far, Severance has ensured that the references made in the series are some version of real-world cases and never really made a direct point. However, if the Montauk reference is explored more, conspiracy theorists and fans of the series will have a lot of food for thought. Montauk is associated with one of the top-secret US military projects that took place at the Montauk Air Force Station, or Camp Hero, on Long Island, New York. But that's not the major detail, considering these military projects involved everything from mind control research to time travel, teleportation, and even aliens. Yes, a real conspiracy theory that had a lot of details associated with it once Preston B. Nichols' book, The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time, came out in 1992. According to the book, which is based on the repressed memories that Nichols had from his time being involved in the highly classified experiments that were conducted at Montauk, the projects were wild. Now, one of the major examples of the projects was the use of kidnapped children to develop their psychic abilities that would eventually turn them into weapons. Apart from that, the Time Travel Project focused on bending space-time for military projects. There were even experiments that led to communication with extraterrestrials. At one point, a creature is supposed to have escaped the facility during an experiment gone wrong, known as the Montauk Monster. It might sound like a big hoax because of the lack of evidence, but this project and its details have turned into fodder for the sci-fi world, with the project being spread across pop culture. With references from TV shows, movies, and even video games, the project has become a major fan follower. This isn't even the first time that a major TV series has referenced this project, because Netflix's Stranger Things was heavily influenced by it as well, and at one point, the series was going to be titled Montauk by the Duffer Brothers. Significant elements in this series were inspired by the project and its theories, including the experiments on children and the Upside Down. Even The X-Files, a show that regularly deals with such conspiracy theories in its narrative, mentions this project and its various experiments, so it's quite clear that Montauk and its association cannot just be a passing element, it might just be the next big detail we need from a series like Severance. Severance explores the narrative of people who have severed from their persona and created a whole new persona that goes on to work at Lumen, while the outside person lives their own life. I mean, that does sound like some crazy psychological experiment that could have happened at Montauk, but what does this all mean for Severance? What does the existence of the Montauk Project mean for Severance? Earlier this season, there was much discussion regarding a project titled The Cold Harbor, which was associated with both Mark and Gemma. While Mark was the only employee who could complete this project, his wife Gemma, or Miss Casey for the Innie world, felt like the person being experimented upon using this project. In another of our videos, we discussed the various project names and how they might be associated with the world of Severance. However, the Montauk reference changes the whole interpretation of the series and what it could mean for the world of the series. In fact, fans have already pointed out that another rather odd moment from the latest episode actually features something that might hint towards Montauk. As the MDR employees followed the directions given by their creepy clones, they came across a giant seal carcass, and Irving even suggested that they should eat it. Now, there's some eerie similarity between this event and the 2008 event where an unidentified creature's body was unearthed near Montauk's Air Force Base. While discussing the series, showrunner Ben Stiller stated that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind heavily influenced it, and Mark's arc in the series clearly references that. In fact, Stiller himself directed Zoolander, where the protagonist, played by Stiller himself, was psychologically experimented upon so that he could assassinate a target. I can't believe we just referenced Zoolander here, but what if the experiment is similar to the various conspiracies we might have heard about the Montauk Project? Now, one must also look at why Irving saw this particular project in his dream instead of the various projects that we've heard him and his MDR colleagues working on. Irving has a lot of mystery surrounding him, with the ending of the first season suggesting that something wholly different might be at play when it comes to his outie. The idea that he could simply guess that Helena was disguising as her Innie, and also she's a member of the Egan family, meant that he must have had some really good detective skills. Maybe the dream was a means of him getting some hints from his outie, the Montauk Project being a reference to the fact that this was all part of a larger experiment at play. The Montauk Project was associated a lot with the Cold War. There are a lot of references to the Cold War period with Russian hats and odd-looking computers, and Kir is celebrated in a manner that looks very similar to some figures from the early years of the Soviet Union. Maybe Irving's outie was exploring one of the leaks from these experiments and joined Lumen to become an insider into the entire ordeal. Whatever this reference could mean, it's clear that Irving's story isn't over yet, and there's much more left unexplored in the world of Severance. Marvelous verdict! We're still wondering what happened to Mark's reintegration procedure and if it did bring the outcome they wanted, or if Mark has already started suffering from the side effects of the procedure. It's a lot more bizarre that, somehow, the show managed to shift our focus from that event by bringing something else to light with the latest episode. Maybe all these details will add up to a larger revelation later in the series, and we'll explore something that will take our minds off these points. Whatever happens, we're surely hooked on Severance.
And, as always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, be safe out there, and have a marvelous day.